Joining us now on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law here on Wisconsin Sports Daily, is friend of the show, Matt Perkins from the Bleav in Badgers podcast. Check him out on YouTube as well. Him, Matt Bernstein, a host of other former Badgers. Follow him on Twitter at _Perko_. Matt, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into a couple of different things here. Let's first start talking about the fire chance of Luke Fickell, because Barry Alvarez, we're not going to get to this today as far as doing a topic on it, but we're going to get to it tomorrow. Barry Alvarez last night on ESPN Madison on their show that they do was livid and said the Badger fan base is spoiled rotten, and if you don't like it, leave, and so forth. And he was furious about how that whole thing played out. Your thoughts on Barry's comments about the fire Luke Fickell chance?
Barry's the one who set the expectations for the team to be good. And if Wisconsin fans are spoiled, yeah, because you set up a culture and established a program that expects to compete at the highest level every year. And then when you don't compete at that highest level, people get mad because you're not meeting expectations. So I don't know what he was expecting the people to do, to applaud Luke Fickell for the product that's being put on the field. I sure wouldn't have.
This is the thing, though, when we talk about being spoiled rotten. In my mind, spoiled rotten means we've won national championships. We've won a bunch of Rose Bowls. We've won a bunch of Big Ten titles recently. And now we're having an off year, and now we're mad because we've been spoiled rotten. But realistically, this program hasn't been at that type of level of consistently going to Rose Bowls or consistently winning Big Ten titles really since Brett did it, 3 years in a row, lost all of them, but got there at least and was able to do that. Paul Chryst kept this program at a top 25 level, consistently going to bowl games and so forth, and occasionally being there in that Big Ten title game, which was nice. But Brett really had it at its peak. Then maybe it dropped off a little bit with Chryst, but still at a high level. And now with Fickell, they come in and they're talking national championships, and that's what this is going to be all about. And we're using the portal. But we're not going to be a portal program. We're just going to use it here in the first year. And don't look now. Everybody is a portal program. Their portal quarterbacks have stunk out loud, and they can't stay healthy. So literally nothing that he has touched, I don't think has gone right. I mean, I guess you could say Tressel has been okay at this point, but I don't know if I'd say his defenses were that of Jim Leonard defenses. Offensively, the offensive coordinator, they had to part ways with him, Longo, and now they've been getting Grimes, who lasted in Kansas all of 1 year, so who knows how long he's here for. Like, literally nothing has gone right for this head coach since he's been at Madison.
It doesn't help when the administration isn't spending the money on the football program like the rest of the competition. So, yeah, there have been some not great coaching hires, especially at the coordinator and position coach levels. We also saw how well the air raid did.
Right.
But they haven't invested in the front office portion either. And every big time football program has a proper GM, and this entire recruiting staff of 30, 50 people. You look at Georgia, you look at Alabama, you look at Ohio State. And Wisconsin, it wasn't that long ago that they went 9 months without a recruiting coordinator, without anyone in a recruiting department. And that was during the Paul Chryst administration. But that demonstrates to me the athletic department's misunderstanding of the fundamentals of the college football landscape in the 2020s.
I have a text message that came in our Nicolay Law Fan Talking text line. Tell me how much you agree with this. From the 414, we're in a bunch of trouble because when Paul Chryst was coach, our recruiting coordinator left for Michigan State, leaving us with 0 people in the recruiting department. Ironically, that recruiting coordinator, when he went to Michigan State, had a staff of 10 people, so they had 10 people on us to our 0. What say you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was referencing, the Saeed Khalif situation.
Yep.
And so it's not just Fickell. This neglect has been established by the athletic department, before Fickell arrived, but I think it's been exacerbated by the complete removal of all of the Wisconsin loyalists and all the people who worked in the department who were Badgers, right? Who knew the alumni network, who knew the former player network. And that's been pulled out. There's not nearly as much alignment with or investment in former players coming back and being around the program. And you couple that with some bad luck at the quarterback at health, and just a lot of shuffling of coaches. And you've got this mishmash and just a mess of a product on the field.
Talking with Matt Perkins, Bleav in Badgers podcast. Check him out on YouTube as well. Him and Matt Bernstein do a great job. Have a bunch of former Badgers on all the time, former guys that were in the NFL, all kinds of different players. It's a great deal. Check it out. Follow him on Twitter at _Perko_. So since you're tight with these guys, is there some type of angst or disappointment or anger or emotion towards the guy running this whole thing in Chris McIntosh, since he is one of them and has eliminated all of the Badgers, I guess, inside of the program, it sounds like?
Yeah, I mean, Casey Robach's sort of the only one left standing here at this point. And from the people I've talked with, yeah, there's a lot of anger and consternation and feeling like the administration has abandoned them, as former players, unless you are one of the really, really, really big names.
Like what?
Yeah, like if you're JJ Watt, if you are, Melvin Gordon, Monte Ball,
Dane.
that stature of player, you're still welcome back. But whereas under Christ and previous administrations, former players who maybe were walk-ons and barely ever saw the field were still welcome back at any point to come to the field, to come to the games, to be part of the game day. And that is not happening nearly as much anymore. And I know that is a direct frustration I've heard from former players. And then the product on the field obviously is not something they enjoy watching because of not just the wins and losses, but getting, ripped apart on the ground, especially last year when I think when Iowa ran all over Wisconsin to the tune of 365 yards or whatever it was last year. That was a low moment because Wisconsin has always had the backbone of a defense, and especially a good run defense. And that when you said, Treshel has done a good job, I would push back on that. I thought that he's adapted the scheme this year. This year, the run defense is significantly improved.
Well, they got a bunch of 300-pound guys. Last year, they had 2. This year, they got 9 on the defensive line.
Exactly.
On
so
that
you
roster.
Can say that
That's
he's adapted there, but it took into year 3 to make the realization that, we're playing in the Big Ten. We might want to have some big, thick bodies on the defensive line, because we're going up against, 1,600 pounds of beef on the offensive line for every single one of these teams, plus a blocking tight end who's usually 6'7", 260.
So when Chris was here, not to the level of Bielema or Alvarez, but there were still guys going in the National Football League off of this roster. I don't feel like Fickell really has had a bunch of NFL caliber guys on this roster in his time here.
Whose fault is that?
That's right. But we go back to, and I asked this question at the front of the show. Is it Fickell's fault, or is it the fact that they're just not getting the funding they need to compete at the level they need to compete at? Because you could talk about 3 stars and 4 stars. Well, Chris had a bunch of 3 stars and 4 stars. So did Bielema. But those guys got coached up into being maybe those great level, NFL level caliber players. But even if you just watch that Badger Maryland game, these 3 and 4 star guys they got now do not look like the athletes that they had prior, in my opinion.
No, it doesn't even look like the athletes that Maryland has as their true freshmen. That was one of the things that angered me about the discourse coming off this past weekend. Making excuse for the offensive line. They have 3 redshirt freshmen, starting and playing. I'm like, great. They're getting their butt whooped by true freshmen on Maryland's side. So What does that say? And so if, I think that there is some young talent on this team. I think that there are a couple NFL guys on this current roster. I think Vinny Anthony, most notably, is definitely a Sunday player. Why he doesn't get the ball earlier in the game. It took to the second half of the Alabama game to get the ball in his hands. It took till late in the second quarter, I think, against Maryland to get the ball in his hands. He's a Sunday player. If anyone's watched him play, he's a Sunday player. He's got great hands, got an amazing release off the line. Different story for a different time. But the people brought in through the portal are not those types. And so whereas Wisconsin was used to building those guys up for 2, 3, 4 years after they got in to the program, the strength and conditioning program, and learned under the previous generation, these portal guys come in and get thrown right into being starters haven't developed, and
I'm guessing that's how
any sort of like sense of team.
Yeah, but Matt, I'm guessing that's the only way you can recruit him is by just telling him you're going to play right away. We need help, so you're going to play right away. Yeah, you may go to Michigan and sit for a year or two. Here, you come to Madison, you can play right away. And if you don't like it, you can always leave in the portal, but we think you'll like it and we think you'll stay.
I mean, I
guess isn't that the recruiting pitch at this point?
I think that's the recruiting pitch to everyone, but I don't know if you're a program, Wisconsin, who's not going to, if you're not going to spend the money, you're not going to get the talent. You're not going to retain the talent.
Correct.
Retain the talent. And you look at the Xavier Lucas situation and how that was handled by all parties involved. Not just him, not just Miami, not just Wisconsin, the entirety of the situation.
Right.
Part of that is financial. A big part of that is financial. And if you can't retain the top talent that you have, you're going to just be stuck in this churn.
At the beginning of the show, I read this tweet. I sent it to you about percentage increase spent into the football program. Now, we don't know what the base number was spending in 2005 when this thing started, and we don't know where the
we do.
You do have it?
Yeah. Okay. So actually we do. So on the tweet that you sent me before the show, in the replies, he actually has the base. And so in 2005, UW-Madison spent $21,993,983. In 2024, it was $49,682,268. So in 2005, they were $9 million above the Big Ten conference average, which was $12 million. They were $21 million. So right, that is they're 70% above the Big Ten conference average. Last year, the Big Ten average was $58 million. Wisconsin spent $49. So they're below the Big Ten average by 20%.
And like Indiana, look at the huge jump that Indiana's made with Cignetti. And you just wonder, like, is that a lot of the spending going on there too? Because they had a huge increase of 500% from 2005 to 2025.
Well, they were spending nothing on their football program also, to be fair, back then, right? Because they were purely a basketball school, and they have strategically invested in football, but especially under Cignetti. They have buy-in and alignment with coaches and alumni and donors, and they are clearly doing something right. Because, we all saw what happened to Illinois this past weekend. We all saw them make the playoff last year. Yes, it was against a pretty weak schedule, but they still won the games they were supposed to win, right?
They're
they still
legit.
won all the games they had to win. Yep. And so I think this year they look like an excellent team. I love Mendoza as a quarterback. I loved him when he was at Cal. He's a gamer. And I think that team could go very, very far this year. Also because they play with a chip on their shoulder, and they play with the chip on their shoulder that the Wisconsin Badgers used to play with. And it doesn't feel like the product on the field currently has that same, I keep using chip on your shoulder, right? But that's the only sort of metaphor that I can think that comes to mind right now. And, I'll give a quick plug for our show that we released yesterday I've never heard Bernstein rant like he did on our show yesterday about how upset and disappointed he was with what we saw on the field. And there has to be more guys who actually really care just about putting on the motion W and going out there and playing like it and not having it just be a paycheck. Because that's what it is, it feels like at this point.
There he is, Matt Perkins, at Bleav in Badgers on Twitter. Follow him at _Perko_. I'm telling you, Bleav in Badgers is a great podcast. Him and Matt Bernstein do a great job. Bring back a bunch of former Badgers, as well as they have guests on every week. Matt, thank you so much for coming on, man. We'll hook you up again down the line.
Appreciate it.
You betcha. Take care. There is Matt Perkins joining us here on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call, that's all.